Mhm.
We just accept it because that's what we've grown up with.
Right.
And I would say, I mean, you can answer this for me because I was not a private school student. Is the framework similar?
Um, you mean comparing private and public school?
Well, meaning not meaning. Well, oh my goodness, the first thing you wrote in the book is you had 38 or like 40 students on the roster and 30 desks. No, what I'm asking is, is it where like in elementary school the teacher teaches all the subjects and then once they go to like middle school, then they go to different classrooms?
That was my experience in private school. So it was very similar to the format of public school, where you would have a teacher that would, teach normally the same group of kids in elementary school, and then in middle school they would kind of diversify, and the students would kind of move to the different classrooms at that point.
Okay.
But again, I think we need to start asking those questions of why are we forcing children to learn different things in the way that we're trying to force them to learn, in the time that we're trying to force them to learn. Like, why are we doing this? Who says that a kid has to know how to multiply when they're 8? Like, who made that up? Right? Like, I think we need to start asking those deeper questions. And then the flip side of that is, what would happen if we didn't have that aspect of force in our classrooms? Like, what if children really had the freedom to pursue learning about the things that they loved and enjoyed?
Yeah.
Because that's missing in schools. And again, when kids are learning about things that they're passionate about, that they love, that they're engaged in, you're not going to have behavior issues, right? Like, because they're going to be there because they want to be there.
We could find out. We could do a little test pilot school and
Yeah.
have it, call it individual middle or individual high school.
Well, and
um,
not even dividing, it's kind of like that Montessori style, right? Like having that child-led learning environment where, in Montessori schools, there is no division of grades like that. The kids are learning together, and they're learning at their own pace, and they're able to choose what they want to learn about, and they're able to choose how they want to spend their time. But children, for the most part, in public schools, they don't have that
but
opportunity to literally spend all day, every day being told what to do, how to do it, when to do it by some stranger.
yeah, I'm not saying I disagree with you, but I want to play devil's advocate.
Go for it.
And I could say one of the reasons that we do this is to expose kids to, different options in the world that they may otherwise not know about otherwise. Because, communication is the key to like really everything in life and that could be me driving down the street and I see a sign, and it's the guy that I'm running against for county executive, and like that's communicating to me that this person is running for office,
Mm-hmm.
or like I drive down and I see a McDonald's sign. Oh, that's where I can get food. Well, I only know that that's a McDonald's sign because of the commercials on TV. Well, I only have a TV because when I was a kid, that's what we grew up with. So when I was an adult, I bought one for myself, and so like, I think part of school is exposing kids to a wide variety of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I do agree with you that at a certain point, and I don't know what grade level or whatever you can call it that could be, but we should give kids a little bit more flexibility, that helps them become critical thinkers. And
Right.
and I'm going to say this because I know this I've heard this from so many teachers that it cannot be false. Teaching kids to standards and teaching them to a standardized test is a huge mistake.
It is.
And
It's a huge mistake. It's a huge waste of time, and it is incredibly harmful for children and for teachers. It's incredibly harmful.
it takes away teachers' ability to have that flexibility, and I mean I get why it's done because again now going back to politics on my end of this, and I'm glad we're talking because a politician talking to a teacher. I think this needs to happen more often one-on-one and
Yeah.
not like, in a group setting where, there's interruptions and, things like that. And I'm going to recommend to all my other fellow politicians out there, whether you are an elected official or whether you're just running for office, consider checking out Angela's book. And can you say the title again for me? Because my phone flipped off.
Yes, Tales of a Toxic Teacher: Exposing the Cycles of Abuse Within Our Schools, and it's available on Amazon.
Because I was going to say, you can get it on Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
and you're working on the audiobook.
I am. It is a work in progress.
The first 3 chapters are online
Mm-hmm.
as a great teaser. I mean, honestly, you're a great reader, number one.
Oh, thank you.
And it's very well paced. So, if you want to, you can put it on 2x, and Angela still comes through loud and clear. But if you want to digest this important information, you read it at a very good, I don't want to say slow pace, but slow average pace. So, even people who and maybe this has been one of my criticisms that I hear from people, is that I speak too slow sometimes. But my grandmother used to get on me about that, because I would speak. Actually, I'm kind of talking fast right now to you, and she'd say, "Adam, I can't keep up. You repeat yourself." So you get used to speaking slower. Mm-hmm. And I do it on one of my YouTube channels, because I know that there's people who are out there who speak a different language, and it may not pick up on the closed captioning, that YouTube does.
Yes.
So, like I said, just the first 3 chapters are just woo. So, I mean, how many chapters are in the book?
There are 12 chapters.
Okay. So wow. Like I said, if everybody out there just checks out even just the introduction video.
So the first ones are up there, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to finish the rest of it very soon. I've had a lot of people reaching out and asking for the audiobook version of my book. So.
People, like to listen to this type of thing when they're driving to work or driving home from, work. And I personally like audiobooks, because I tried my best to not look at computer screens all day. So when I can, just sit back and close my eyes and listen, I prefer to do that.
Yeah, me too. I've been getting into audiobooks more recently. And I think there's so much valuable knowledge out there in the world, and to be able to just do something, do the dishes or something and listening to a book is nice. Otherwise, I feel like I wouldn't be able to have a lot of time to read as much as I would like to.
Yep. And I try to do that with some of my political activism, reading different bills or laws, because a lot of people will not go through 60 pages, and they may not know how to pronounce certain words and may not know what those words are. So that's one of the things that I've done. This is prior to me running for office.
Yeah.
And I just said, this is something that is needed more, so we know how our government system's working. And I've also read the Declaration of Independence in full.
On your YouTube channel?
I don't know if it's on one of my YouTube channels. But I read that. I read the Maryland Declaration of Rights.
Oh, okay.
And so it's just, I really think that, and I don't want to call people lazy, but we just don't always have the time to sit down and read.
I would tell you, I've been a teacher for over 12 years, and I had never read the Constitution until just this last year, with all the stuff that was happening with COVID. That was literally the first time that I read the Constitution, read, our Maryland Constitution. I didn't even know Maryland had a Constitution until a year ago.
It's really long. The Declaration of Rights is one thing, but the entire Maryland Constitution I haven't even read yet.
Yeah.
So
I was reading through that, and a lot of the things that they share in there. It's it's easy to have people take away our rights when we aren't even aware that there are rights that we have. Yes, ma'am. And they're rights that are protected by our Constitution, not given to us by our Constitution. And I mean, it's shocking to me that I could be a teacher for 12 years and gone to school my whole life and never knew the Bill of Rights or anything like that.
Yeah, and it's amazing that, it's actually one of the big reasons I ran for office, is because I saw our rights just being stripped from us, and I made sure Monday night is when I finally was able to debate the county executive in a proper setting with, multiple questions. And I made sure to say that, like, you know, like our freedoms have been eroding, and you know,
Right.
like I don't know if he even realizes like he didn't have,
Right.
and you know, he's lucky that we have police and sheriff's office who basically just let things slide because, you know, in other states they don't tolerate that. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
it's more the norm to have our rights violated than it is for the police to step in and say, "Excuse me, county executive. Excuse me, mayor. Excuse me, governor. You can't do this."
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and again, it all goes back to that essential question of, do I have a right to treat another free human being through force, threats, and coercion? Do I have a right to do that? Is that a moral thing to do? Is that a moral way to interact with another human being? And my answer to that question would be no. No one has a moral right to force, coerce, threaten, manipulate you into doing something. And in fact, even our law books state that, right? Coercion is a crime. Like it is an actual, literal crime. And yet, everything that we have experienced over the last 2 years has been nothing short of coercion, over and over and over and over in every aspect of how they've handled the COVID crisis.
that's correct. And for any of them out there, because what they always say to me is, "Well, Adam, people were dying," and my response was, "Okay, so why didn't you treat them early? How come everybody that I talked to that had COVID in 2020 said to me, we were told if your condition gets worse, go to the emergency room, go to urgent care. In the meantime, take a Tylenol if you get pain, and sleep a lot." And when I heard that, and I experienced that because I had COVID in November 2020,
Mm-hmm.
before vaccines were even available. Not that I was going to get one. I don't know what your opinion on, and you know, but like you said, coercion. You should never be forced to say to me, especially with something that's a brand new medicinal product, you have to get this.
Right.
When that well, at first it was, if you want it, you can get it. And I was
Yeah.
perfectly okay with that, with one exception. They weren't not telling people, by the way, this isn't like the normal vaccines that you don't, that we've been, you know, that you've been accustomed to for all your life, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and they didn't disclose that to people. And when the government did that, I was very angry.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't have a big megaphone. You know, I only can say so much and do so much with the audience that I have, even though I have you know, to me, it's a lot of, I have 7,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel that this video is going on. I have 2,000 plus on Twitter, 26,000 on another channel. But even with those numbers, I don't have the numbers that WBAL or WJZ or Fox 5 DC or CNN or Fox News or MSNBC, any of these like satellite media organizations have.
Yeah.
So if they withheld information from the public, that to me is number one. It's a public disservice. I'm going to say it's criminal. Many people would say it's borderline criminal to
Oh, it is.
withhold.
I think it's definitely criminal. I mean, we have rules about informed consent. You know, that's one of the
There we
principles
go.
that we have, right? That patients have a right to informed consent. And I got COVID at the very beginning of everything in April of 2020. So when
Oh,
all of this started, I had it at the very beginning. And at the time, both of my parents had it as well. They're both elderly. Both of them had multiple underlying conditions. I have some underlying conditions myself. And to be honest, I was terrified. Like I thought it was a death sentence based on
right.
what I was hearing in the news, and no one knew what to do, and no one knew what was going on. And all three of us, my parents, both of my elderly parents, both of them with underlying conditions, and myself, we all recovered just fine. And after that, I started really looking into, okay, wait a second, if this is really as deadly and as scary as they say, both of my parents should have died. I could have, easily. I mean, I thought I would have. I was just so scared.
Right.
And after that, that was when I really started looking into the data and looking, what is the CDC reporting? How many deaths are really happening? What are the ages of the people that are dying? What is the difference between the number of deaths that happened last year versus the number of deaths that happened this year? There's no statistical difference, and even just looking at the numbers, seeing that 99% of people under the age of, I think it was under the age of 65, would naturally recover without any other interventions.
Yep.
99% of the people. And so when you look at those numbers, I mean, that the statistics and the data is what really helped me to not be afraid. Like, okay, I've gotten it, I've survived. I'm looking at the data and the statistics. Yes, there's a 1% chance that, people might pass away, but does that 1% give the government a right to infringe upon our liberty and our freedom? And I don't think they do,
Yep. And I'll say out to everybody out there, that number then becomes more like 99.999% if early treatment happens.
Right.
So people that have
children also. I mean, children were virtually at zero risk of any complications from COVID, which I think was part of what was so upsetting for me, to see that we literally locked children in their homes. We had fear porn on the TV all day, every day, constantly all around them with these messages of fear and death and destruction and anxiety and all the chaos for children for 2 years, making them wear masks so they couldn't see people's faces, which we know there's multiple scientific studies about human beings need to see people's faces in order to develop empathy. Like, children need to see your face. As an ESOL teacher, I wrote a letter to every single person like in the Maryland government, and I sent them a letter. And I said, it is wrong that we are forcing children to wear masks. It's a disservice to English language learners. I worked with ESOL students. It's a disservice to them. They need to be able to see my mouth in order to understand what I'm saying. They are learning the language.
I remember. I'm sorry, what?
No, go ahead.
No, I couldn't. The last thing you said was cut off because I was talking over you.
Oh, no, I just said it was awful. Like, to be able to write this letter to these people and have literally no response and saying that what we're doing to these children is a crime. It's wrong.
And that's why I ran for office, ma'am. Seriously, I was right there with you, writing to these different authority figures and not hearing back from them, or I would get a form letter at best. I mean, when I was literally sending them, you might want to rethink that whole vaccination thing, because these are some of the concerns. And if this is true, you're going to get people killed. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we'll never really know what the true numbers are. Yeah. Of what people were actually dying from. Mm-hmm. I can just tell you that every single family member of mine that got COVID, which is basically 100% at this point, we all lived. Yeah. And we have a variety of people in our family. We have skinny people, obese people, average weight. We have my grandfather's in his 90s. My grandmother, she died last year for different reason. But my other grandparents, they're in their 80s. They think they may have had it at one point. Mm-hmm. But you don't know. I never tested positive because I never took a test. I just know I had it because I lost my sense of taste and smell. And my mom did test positive, and I got it from her during Thanksgiving dinner.
Same. I never took a test either, but both of my parents tested positive, and I lived with them, and I lost my sense of taste and smell too, which was super weird.
Yeah, that was definitely, and that lasted for me for about 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh, that lasted for me for a long time, and then after that, I had the parosmia thing. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
That's when you get your sense of taste and smell back, but everything just smells awful.
Interesting.
Awful.
No, that never happened to me, luckily.
Like rotten eggs or something gross. It was terrible.
Interesting.
Yeah. That was worse, I think, than not being able to taste or smell anything.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, but it, just from our own experience, like, we can see this is not, they were showing, I remember when they were showing us pictures of dead bodies in China, covered with the white tarps and stuff. And that was really what I was expecting or anticipating for us to experience.
I was definitely scared when I, got I got a sore throat, and I was testing my temperature, and it went over 101. Mm-hmm. Because my normal body, I don't know about back then, but nowadays, my normal body temperature is 96 or 97%, because I've fortunately lost a significant amount of weight since then. And that's another thing, is they didn't tell people, hey, and I hear this from nurses all the time, and I was 75 pounds overweight, at when COVID first started, and nurses that I speak to now and back in 2021 when I first started, coming out with this stuff against Governor Hogan, and people had found me that way. They said, yeah, early on it was nothing but people who are very old, so like 95 plus, and people who are like, let's say 280 pounds or heavier. And they never got on that microphone and said, hey, we know we have an obesity problem in America. If you drop some weight, you'll have a higher chance of not going to the hospital. And that could have saved a lot of people. Sorry, what?
Instead, they decided to close all the gyms for 2 years. Like, it just...
Well, that was kind of the the punchline to the joke.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I mean, I get why they did that. But at the same time, they could have said to people, it's still safe to walk around your neighborhood, which is what I did, by the way. Because right before everything shut down, I had actually just got a pool membership at the local community college. So I was going and swimming at their indoor pool in February because just walking hurt my feet, hurt my hip, hurt my knee. So I said I need to start swimming to lose weight and also obviously change my diet.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry to get all off track, but like this is the type of thing that it just made me so angry at the media, at the politicians, that they just, like even my own doctor, when I first went in back in 2017 and I knew I was overweight, my doctor was afraid to say, hey, Adam, lose some weight. Like, and I had to like pull one out of them. Like, it's okay. Like, and I just need some guidance. And they, they said you need to do that, but it's funny because it's like, they tell you what not to eat, but they don't tell you what to eat, which is like the easier thing to do.
Yeah.
Like give me my grocery list. And
yes.
I mean, it's like, and unfortunately it seems like nowadays, like the only thing you really can eat that's not really toxic, going back to the title of your book, is like salads.
Even that though, I mean, it just all the chemicals and pesticides and all that stuff that they put in our foods now. It's like, even with salads, like you can have a salad and it could still be full of toxic things for you. True. So yeah, it just toxicity in all the places, all the places.
I don't know. So, all right, going back to your book.
Yeah.
The Silent Game.
Yes.
Let's talk about The Silent Game, because that was a very interesting reminder of I don't know what to call it, a teacher tactic, but and it really kind of pairs into what happened with COVID, actually.
Yeah.
And so go ahead, take it away. I've been talking too much.
Yeah, the silent game. If you have gone to school, I'm sure that you've probably played the silent game in your class, and that is a teacher tactic that a lot of times we use, that we make a game out of getting kids to be quiet. And we reward them for whoever can be quiet the longest. And I actually closed one of my chapters talking about that, saying that a lot of times as teachers, we are forced to play the silent game. We are forced to be quiet and be silent about the problems that happen in schools because we don't want to risk losing our pension. We don't want to risk losing our job. We don't want to risk losing our license, which is what I'm faced with right now. And so we're kind of forced to play the silent game and to keep quiet as long as we can, and whoever can keep quiet the longest will win.
I think it was a very strong point in your book. And it's something that I wish that our society, because I don't know how the average citizen in the United States back in the 1700s actually was, because obviously I didn't live back then. But I read these history books, and it contains these letters and these speeches from these different not even just the founding fathers, but like regular everyday citizens who helped form the foundation of this country. And they weren't afraid to speak out and say, like, this is wrong. This is how things maybe could be.
Yeah.
and throwing out ideas and solutions and, and then everybody, gets together and says, oh yeah, that's good. Or no, that's a horrible idea. And then this is how we form a more perfect union, as it were.
Hmm.
And, to get teaching and education, which by the way, I should mention, is a significant chunk of your taxpayer dollars if you're listening out there, and no
Hmm.
matter what state you're in, but especially if you're in Maryland, it's a significant chunk by law. It's a
Hmm.
significant chunk of the money.
Yeah.
And
Actually, I share about that too. And you're in Baltimore County or Baltimore City?
county.
Okay. Yeah, they spend over $16,000 per student. Over $16,000 per student. And there are schools in Baltimore County and Baltimore City that don't have air conditioning. Like, don't have air conditioning. And $16,000, you can go to a great private school for $16,000.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
you can, I mean, if I could use, my children are homeschooled because I will not put them in a toxic environment like a public school. But if I could have access to $16,000 towards their education, I could do a whole lot more and a whole lot better than $16,000 in a public school environment.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's one thing that, this is something that public schools can't do. But I think that at one point in the past, we had, I'll call them second chance schools or alternative schools,
Yeah, charter
where
schools and things.
where like, really bad, not like the ones who might, they might have a bad day and get frustrated and, you know, yell at the teacher, whatever, yell at their peers. But like the students who are like constantly disruptive, you know.
Yeah, well, alternative schools are typically used for kids that have severe emotional disturbances or severe emotional mental health problems. Um, yeah, they're very, very challenging environments, especially to teach in.
Yeah. So what that was one of the things, and again, I think the kids that I had when I was a long-term sub were for the most part very good.
Hmm.
But the year 2014, when I tried it the second time around, that was the chaos that I was warned about, that I was afraid of. And that was the last day that I was a substitute teacher, because
Hmm.
I
What happened, if you don't mind me asking?
oh my goodness, like, so I don't know how. To me, a substitute teacher should not be someone who's proctoring tests or exams.
Yeah.
That should be on the teacher to do, because they know how to spot cheaters, they know how to spot, you know they have better control over a classroom than a sub ever can. They know
Hmm.
all their students' names and faces. A substitute, is thrown into chaos basically, and we
Yeah.
do our best. We do our best as human beings, but there's just no way you can, do what a normal teacher can do. It's just not physically possible.
Right.
So I get thrown in, and they're like, yeah, I'm giving a test on Friday, and that's what you're going to be doing. And I'm like, okay. So, of course, I saw some students were trying to cheat, and I, of course, got attitude right off the bat. And then after the test part of that class was finished, it broke into chaos.
Mm.
What It was a number of female, well, I would just say male and female students calling one other girl a slut.
Oh
And then,
my.
of course, she's defending herself, saying, I'm not a slut. And then physical fight almost broke out. A physical fight actually did break out right outside the classroom, which unfortunately, because it was literally like my second day returning to substitute teaching, because I kept getting calls from the substitute system. I never got off of it, because I was like, maybe I'll go back. And then finally I was like, okay, I need some money, I'll go back. I tried doing it, and the first day was okay, and the second day was, like I said, it was my last day.
Mm.
And it was just absolute chaos. And like kids were out of their chairs, and just you give up after a certain point, because
Yeah.
what are you going to do? Because best thing I could do is, if a fight did break out, I would try to separate it.
Mm.
I don't even know what the legalities of that were, but as a human being, I'm not going to let like another student, you know, be able to. I mean, I've heard like kids, a student gets knocked out and the other student continues to punch them and continues to kick them, and I'm like, I can't
Yeah.
stand by and let that happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel bad for the smaller teachers, especially the female teachers,
Hmm.
who don't have the strength to be able to do that.
Yeah. They actually told us as part of my teacher training in my first year, that was one of the things that they told us, was that if you see two students fighting, you cannot intervene. You cannot physically separate them or like put your hands on any of them, or we could face repercussions for putting our hands on a child. But it just like, so we just stand there and watch them beat the tar out of each other
No,
for
it's
until
so
security decides to show up when there are multiple fights happening all over the building at the same time. And
right.
it's chaos.
That
Sometimes I wondered, I'm like, this literally feels more like a prison than an educational facility.